Hey guys, tonight we're going to step into a world of thunderous hooves, screaming crowds, and the constant, chilling scent of danger. Forget everything you know about NASCAR or horse racing. We're diving into the heart of ancient Rome, specifically the brutal, exhilarating, and often deadly world of chariot racing. This isn't just a sport, it's a national obsession, a political spectacle, and a terrifying gamble where lives are won and lost in a cloud of dust and splintered wood. Imagine trading your comfy stadium seat for a front row view of a bloody crash, where the cheering crowds might be more interested in the fallen than the victor. Now, let's be real for a second. You probably think tailgating at a football game gets pretty wild. Imagine an event that combines the fanaticism of the Super Bowl, the danger of a demolition derby, and the political intrigue of a presidential election, all rolled into one and amplified by thousands of years of history. You're trading your neatly printed tickets for a seat on a stone bench, your team jersey for the colors of a racing faction that can make or break your social standing, and your casual snack for the possibility of witnessing gruesome death. There's no official review, no safety regulations, and definitely no participation trophies for the fallen. This is a spectacle that tested the limits of human endurance, pushing charioteers to the brink of glory and often to the embrace of an early grave. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're listening from, say, a sprawling sports complex in Texas where passion for the game runs deep, or perhaps a quiet living room in Kentucky where horse racing is a way of life, tell me where you are and what time it is. I love hearing how far these stories travel. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You've heard the whispers, haven't you? The tales of legendary charioteers, of fortunes won and lost, of emperors themselves captivated by the thunderous roar. As a common Roman citizen, perhaps a young artisan from a workshop near the bustling Subura district, or a farmer visiting the capital from the fertile plains of Campania, the lure of the Circus Maximus is undeniable. This isn't just a racetrack, it's the largest structure in ancient Rome, a colossal arena designed to hold over 150,000, perhaps even 250,000 spectators. Imagine a venue that dwarfs any modern stadium you've ever seen. A grand valley of stone and tiered seating stretching over half a mile long, right in the heart of the city. You make your way through the teeming streets on race day, the air thick with excitement, the smell of dust, sweat, and cheap wine. The crowd is a sea of vibrant colors, each person wearing the distinctive hue of their favorite racing faction: the greens, the blues, the reds, and the whites. This isn't just a casual allegiance, it's a deep, tribal loyalty, passed down through families, shaping social circles, and even influencing political allegiances. You proudly wear a splash of your chosen faction's color, a small ribbon or a tunic detail, feeling a surge of belonging as you join the passionate throng. This isn't just sports fandom, it's a fundamental part of your identity in Rome, far more intense than any modern football rivalry. As you enter the vast expanse of the Circus Maximus, the sheer scale of it takes your breath away. The enormous, sandy track, known as the Spina, a long dividing barrier adorned with ornate statues, obelisks, and lap counters. The tiered seating rises steeply on either side, packed shoulder to shoulder with screaming, eager faces. The air vibrates with the collective energy of the crowd, a low hum that can erupt into a deafening roar at any moment. The sun beats down on the open arena, glinting off the polished marble decorations. This isn't a leisurely afternoon at the races. This is an all-consuming spectacle, a visceral assault on your senses. The races themselves are a series of heats, each involving up to 12 chariots, though often fewer. Typically four-horse chariots known as quadrigae. The charioteers, small, wiry figures, stand in their flimsy wooden chariots, reins wrapped tightly around their waists, their bodies poised for the explosive start. The horses, magnificent and powerful, are a blur of muscle and speed. The gate drops, and they burst forward, a thunderous roar of hooves and shouting echoing through the vast arena. The race is 7 laps, each marked by the lowering of a dolphin or egg counter on the spina, a frantic dash of speed, skill, and terrifying danger. But chariot racing is more than just a race, it's a social and political phenomenon, an obsession that permeates every level of Roman society. The factions are not just sports teams, they are powerful organizations with immense wealth, vast stables, and political connections that stretch into the highest echelons of power. Emperors themselves often favored certain factions, making allegiance a risky political statement. Imagine your chosen sports team directly influencing who gets elected or who holds power in your government. This isn't just casual support, it's fanaticism factio, a deep, almost religious devotion that can lead to riots, violence, and even assassinations. You might engage in heated debates in the streets, arguing passionately about the merits of your faction's charioteer or the supposed cheating of a rival team. These discussions can escalate quickly, turning into shouting matches or even physical altercations. As passions run incredibly high, your loyalty to your faction defines your social circle, influences whom you trust, and even dictates where you sit at the circus. The colors you wear are a declaration of your identity, a silent challenge to anyone wearing a rival hue. A fascinating, yet often overlooked, detail of the faction system was that these organizations also owned vast properties, employed thousands of people from stable hands to veterinarians, and were involved in extensive breeding programs for their horses. They were effectively ancient multinational corporations, their economic power rivaling that of some senators. This comprehensive control over every aspect of the sport cemented their immense influence and their role as powerful, almost quasi governmental entities within Rome. Historians still widely debate the true extent to which these factions operated as political parties, rather than purely sporting clubs, highlighting the blurred lines between entertainment and governance in the Roman Empire. The charioteers aurigae themselves are not just athletes, they are stars, almost mythological figures, revered by millions. But their lives are precarious. Many are slaves or freedmen, their freedom and wealth dependent entirely on their victories. They train relentlessly, honing their skills, building their bodies, and mastering the art of controlling a team of 4 powerful horses at breakneck speeds. Their faces, often grim and determined, show the toll of countless races, countless near misses, and the constant threat of injury or death. Their training begins young, often as stable hands, learning to care for the horses, to understand their temperaments, and to master the complex art of driving. They are taught how to control the reins, wrapped tightly around their waists, how to brace themselves against the turns, and how to survive a crash. This isn't just about strength, it's about balance, instinct, and an almost superhuman ability to react in split second decisions. Their lives are a constant gamble, each race a roll of the dice, where victory brings immense fame and wealth, but defeat can bring agonizing death. The chariots themselves are incredibly lightweight, almost flimsy, designed for speed rather than protection. Made of wood and leather, they are little more than a small, open basket on 2 wheels, offering virtually no protection to the charioteer. Imagine standing in such a vehicle, hurtling around a sandy track at top speed, surrounded by other chariots, each driver jostling for position. The design is deliberately dangerous, intended to maximize the thrill of the spectacle. ensuring plenty of crashes and spills for the ravenous crowd. The small size and fragility of the chariots meant that minor collisions could quickly escalate into spectacular, devastating pile-ups, much to the delight of the spectators. The reins are wrapped around the charioteer's waist, giving them maximum control over the horses, but also creating a terrifying danger. If the chariot crashes, the driver can be dragged along the track, a horrifying spectacle of dust, hooves, and splintering wood. A curved knife, a falx, is often carried to cut the reins in such an emergency, a desperate attempt to escape a gruesome death. This simple yet crucial tool highlights the constant, immediate threat that charioteers faced, a stark reminder that they were always just a moment away from oblivion. This stark choice, control or escape, defined their every second on the track. As the race unfolds, the track becomes a swirling vortex of dust, hooves, and splintering wood. The turns, especially at the ends of the spina, are the most dangerous points, known as the metae. Here, chariots jostle for position, scraping against the turning posts, sometimes crashing into them in a shower of sparks and splinters. Collisions are common, spectacular, and often fatal. Horses tangle, chariots overturn, and drivers are dragged or flung into the path of oncoming hooves. The crowd roars its approval, their bloodlust seemingly insatiable, as the tragedy unfolds before their very eyes. This isn't a bug in the system, it's a feature designed to heighten the excitement and deliver the brutal spectacle that the Roman populace craved. The deafening roar of the Circus Maximus continues, a relentless tide of human passion and raw power. You've just witnessed the exhilarating, terrifying start of a race, a blur of hooves and splintering wood. But to truly understand the brutal world of chariot racing, you need to delve deeper than the mere spectacle. You need to grasp the immense power of the factions, the consuming fanaticism, and the political heart that beat beneath every race. This isn't just about athletic competition, it's a national obsession, a fundamental part of Roman public life that transcended mere sport. The racing factions, the Blues Veneti, Greens Prasini, Reds Russati, and Whites Albati, were far more than modern sports teams. They were powerful, wealthy organizations, almost like ancient multinational corporations or political parties, wielding immense influence throughout the empire. Each faction owned vast stables, employed thousands of people from stable hands and veterinarians to trainers and armorers, and maintained extensive breeding programs for their horses. They even had their own fan clubs, with elaborate rituals and symbols. Your allegiance to a particular faction wasn't a casual choice, it was often a deep, tribal loyalty, passed down through families, shaping your social circles, influencing who you trusted, and even dictating political allegiances. Imagine your chosen sports team directly influencing who gets elected to public office or who holds power in your government. This isn't just casual support, it's fanaticism factio, a deep, almost religious devotion that could lead to fervent parades, widespread street brawls, and even deadly riots that swept through the city, challenging imperial authority. You proudly wear a splash of your chosen faction's color, a small ribbon, a tunic detail, or perhaps even a painted shield, feeling a surge of belonging and collective identity as you join the passionate throng. This color is a declaration of your identity, a silent challenge to anyone wearing a rival hue, and a clear signal of your loyalties. The intensity of this fanaticism often bordered on the insane. People would spend fortunes betting on their favorite factions, sometimes ruining their families in the process. They would curse rival drivers, throw curses literally, lead tablets inscribed with spells at opposing horses, and even resort to violence outside the circus. Imagine the emotional roller coaster of a race day, the soaring highs of victory, the crushing lows of defeat, amplified by the financial and social stakes. This wasn't just entertainment, it was life, played out in the arena, with your personal fortunes and social standing intrinsically linked to the performance of a charioteer you'd likely never meet. A particularly unique and often disturbing aspect of this fanaticism was the role of magic and curses, the ficciones. Archaeological finds have uncovered hundreds of lead tablets, known as curse tablets, specifically targeting charioteers and horses of rival factions. Imagine a desperate fan convinced their team is being cheated, secretly commissioning a sorcerer to inscribe a curse, burying it near the circus or in a rival stable, hoping to bring misfortune, injury, or even death to their opponents. These weren't just idle threats, they were believed to have real power in a superstitious age. This hidden, magical underworld of racing highlights the extreme lengths to which fans would go, revealing the dark underbelly of their devotion. Historians still debate the true prevalence and effectiveness of these curses, but their widespread discovery speaks volumes about the pervasive belief in magical intervention in Roman life. The charioteers Aurignae themselves were the rock stars of the ancient world. They were often slaves, or freedmen, former slaves, but their victories could bring them immense wealth, fame, and even social mobility far beyond their humble origins. They were celebrities, their faces appearing on mosaics, lamps, and everyday objects. But their lives were precarious, a constant dance with death. Many began their careers young, often as stable hands, learning to care for the horses, understand their temperaments, and master the complex art of driving. They honed their skills through relentless training, building wiry, strong bodies, and developing an almost superhuman ability to react in split-second decisions at breakneck speeds. Their very attire was a testament to the danger. They wore a leather helmet for some protection, and a padded tunic, sometimes with straps resembling armor. But their most distinctive feature was how they held the reins wrapped tightly around their waists. This gave them maximum control over their powerful horse teams, but it also created a terrifying danger. If the chariot crashed, the driver could be dragged along the track, a horrifying spectacle of dust, hooves, and splintering wood. A small, curved knife, a falx, was often carried tucked into their belt, specifically to cut the reins in such an emergency. A desperate, final attempt to escape a gruesome, prolonged death. This simple yet crucial tool highlights the constant immediate threat that charioteers faced, a stark reminder that they were always just a moment away from oblivion, choosing control over potential escape. The chariots themselves were incredibly lightweight, almost flimsy, designed for explosive speed rather than protection. Made of wood, wicker, and leather. They were little more than a small, open basket on two wheels, offering virtually no protection to the charioteer. Imagine standing precariously in such a vehicle, hurtling around a sandy track at top speed, surrounded by other chariots, each driver jostling for position. The design was deliberately dangerous, intended to maximize the thrill of the spectacle, ensuring plenty of crashes and spills for the ravenous crowd. The small size and fragility of the chariots meant that minor collisions could quickly escalate into spectacular, devastating pile-ups naufragia, much to the delight of the spectators, turning the track into a chaotic battlefield of splintered wood and flailing limbs. The track itself, the vast sandy oval of the Circus Maximus, was a death trap. The 7 laps of a typical race were a frantic dash of speed, skill, and terrifying danger. The turns, especially at the ends of the spina, the long dividing barrier, were the most perilous points, known as the metae. Here, chariots jostled for position, scraping against the turning posts, sometimes crashing into them in a shower of sparks and splinters. Collisions naufragia were common, spectacular, and often fatal. Horses would tangle, chariots would overturn, and drivers would be dragged along the track or flung into the path of oncoming hooves. The crowd would roar its approval, their bloodlust seemingly insatiable, as the tragedy unfolded before their very eyes. This isn't a bug in the system, it's a fundamental feature, designed to heighten the excitement and deliver the brutal spectacle that the Roman populace craved. A common Roman saying, illustrating the danger, was that a charioteer's life was shorter than a day's holiday. While perhaps an exaggeration, it vividly captures the perceived mortality rate of the profession. Historians, while lacking precise data, generally agree that the injury and death rates for charioteers were incredibly high, making every victory a true triumph over the odds. The emperor's involvement in chariot racing was profound, making it a truly political spectacle. Emperors would often attend the races, showing their favoritism for a particular faction, sometimes even interfering with the outcome. Though this was rare and risky for public perception, their presence transformed the circus into a direct point of contact between ruler and populace, a place where imperial power was both displayed and subtly challenged. A popular charioteer, especially one who won often, could become a popular figure with the people, sometimes more beloved than the emperor himself, creating an interesting, unspoken power dynamic. This isn't just about who won, it's about the deep social and political currents flowing beneath the surface of the spectacle. The factions, the charioteers, and the roaring crowds were all players in a grand drama of power, entertainment, and the brutal reality of Roman life. You, the spectator, were not just watching a race. You were participating in a fundamental ritual of Roman identity, a visceral experience that connected you to the pulse of the empire, reminding you of its power, its brutality, and its insatiable appetite for spectacle. The roar of the Circus Maximus is a constant companion, but beneath the thunder of hooves and the cheers of the crowd lies the harsh, often deadly, reality for the drivers themselves. You've glimpsed the fanaticism of the factions. Now, let's go behind the scenes to understand the rigorous training and precarious lives of the charioteers, the fragile human beings who face death in every turn of the track. Imagine a typical charioteer, a young man, often in his late teens or early 20s, though some started even younger. Many were slave servi, purchased specifically for their potential as drivers, or freedmen liberti, former slaves who had earned their freedom through skill and victory. Very rarely were they freeborn Romans, as the profession, despite its fame, was considered low status. Your life, if you were a charioteer, was not your own. It was owned by the faction, your existence tethered to the whims of wealthy patrons and the demands of the track. Their training was brutal and began young, often in the vast, private stables, stabula owned by the factions, perhaps located on the outskirts of Rome, vast complexes housing hundreds of horses, trainers, and stable hands. You would start as a stable hand curator, learning to care for the magnificent horses, understanding their temperaments, their strengths, and their weaknesses. This wasn't just manual labor, it was an education in horse psychology, building an intimate bond with the animals that would one day pull your chariot. You'd learn to groom them, feed them, and watch them closely, absorbing every detail from the veteran trainers. As you grew, your training would escalate. You'd practice driving single horses, then pairs bigae, and finally the powerful four-horse teams quadrigae that were the hallmark of Roman racing. This involved mastering the complex art of handling the reins, which were wrapped tightly around your waist, giving you maximum control over the horses, but also creating a terrifying danger. You'd learn how to brace yourself against the violent turns, how to shift your weight, and how to survive the inevitable crashes. This wasn't just about strength, it was about balance, instinct, and an almost superhuman ability to react in split-second decisions at breakneck speeds. Imagine the constant bruising, the scraped knees, the broken fingers from being pulled by powerful animals. The charioteer's attire was minimal, a testament to the danger they faced. They wore a leather helmet for some minimal head protection and a padded tunic, often made of leather and sometimes with straps resembling armor, designed to absorb some impact. Their legs were often wrapped in leather or cloth bandages for support and protection against scrapes. But their most distinctive feature was the reins, wrapped tightly around their waists. This gave them unparalleled control, allowing them to lean into turns and use their full body weight to guide the horses. However, it also meant that if the chariot crashed, the driver could be dragged along the track, a horrifying spectacle of dust, hooves, and splintering wood. To counter this, a crucial yet terrifying tool was carried, a small curved knife called a fall, often tucked into their belt. This was specifically for one purpose: to cut the reins in an emergency, a desperate, final attempt to escape a gruesome, prolonged death by being dragged. Imagine the presence of mind required in a moment of chaotic panic as your chariot splinters around you, to reach for that knife and sever your connection to a runaway team. This simple, yet crucial, tool highlights the constant, immediate threat that charioteers faced, a stark reminder that they were always just a moment away from oblivion, choosing between control and potential escape. This choice defined their every second on the track, where a split-second decision could mean life or a prolonged, agonizing death. A unique and often overlooked aspect of charioteer training was the emphasis on mental fortitude and pain tolerance. They were not just physically strong, they had to be mentally tough, able to push past fear, endure constant pain, and maintain focus in the face of immense pressure. The roaring crowds, the jostling chariots, the constant danger, all demanded an unwavering concentration. They were taught to visualize victory, to ignore the pain of old injuries, and to maintain a steely resolve that bordered on arrogance. This mental conditioning was as vital as their physical prowess in ensuring their survival and success on the deadly track. Historians still debate the specific psychological techniques used by their trainers, often drawing parallels to modern sports psychology. The precariousness of their lives was extreme. The average lifespan of a successful charioteer was surprisingly short, due to the constant dangers. Inscriptions on gravestones often reveal deaths in their 20s or 30s, after relatively short but incredibly intense careers. While records exist of charioteers who won thousands of races and accumulated immense wealth, they were the rare exceptions, the legendary few who defied the odds. For every famous victor like Scorpus or Diocles, there were hundreds, perhaps thousands, of nameless charioteers who met a brutal end on the track, their lives cut short in a cloud of dust. Their injuries were horrifyingly common. Broken bones, concussions, internal injuries from impacts, and severe lacerations were daily occurrences during training and races. The charioteers would bear the scars of their profession, their bodies a testament to the brutal demands of the sport. Imagine a man with multiple healed fractures, a twisted limb, or a face permanently disfigured by a past crash. These were the grim trophies of their dangerous profession, a visible reminder of every near-death experience. The constant pain from old injuries, exacerbated by the grueling training and the jarring impact of racing, was a pervasive part of their existence. Despite these terrifying risks, the allure of glory and wealth was immense. A successful charioteer could earn vast sums of money, enough to buy their freedom if they were a slave, to establish a comfortable life for themselves and their families, and to achieve a level of celebrity that few in Roman society could match. Imagine the roar of the crowd, specifically for you, the adulation, the prestige. This intoxicating blend of fame and fortune drove many to brave the dangers, seeing chariot racing as their only viable path to escape poverty and achieve a life of luxury and respect. A particular detail that highlights the wealth of top charioteers is the mention of their earning huge sums comparable to senators or even emperors. For example, Diocles, a famous charioteer of the 2nd century CE, is said to have earned over 35 million sesterces in prize money during his career. This was an astronomical sum, enough to buy vast estates and fund a comfortable retirement, something almost unheard of for someone of his social origin. This incredible wealth, however, was balanced against the constant threat of death, making their fortune a direct reflection of the extreme risk they undertook with every race. Historians still analyze these ancient earnings to understand the economic realities and extreme stakes of professional Roman sports. The psychological toll of constantly facing death, of living on the edge of glory and oblivion, was immense. Charioteers had to cultivate a detached, almost fatalistic mindset, accepting the dangers as part of the game. They pushed themselves beyond normal human limits, driven by the roar of the crowd, the promise of wealth, and the sheer competitive spirit. Their lives were short, intense bursts of adrenaline and danger, leaving little room for a quiet, stable existence. They were gladiators on wheels, their lives gambled for entertainment, embodying the brutal reality of Roman spectacle. As the cheers of the phantom crowd begin to fade and the image of the dust-choked track softens, you understand the brutal paradox of the charioteer's life. They were celebrated, adored, and sometimes immensely wealthy, but their fame came at the cost of constant pain, perennial danger, and often a tragically short life. Their existence was a testament to the Roman love for spectacle and the human willingness to risk everything for a shot at glory, a fleeting triumph over the ever-present shadow of death in the brutal world of the Roman circus. The roar of the Circus Maximus thunders on, a constant backdrop to the exhilarating danger that defines chariot racing. You've seen the precarious lives of the charioteers, but to truly grasp the brutality of this world, you need to understand the fundamental components of the spectacle. The chariots themselves, flimsy vehicles built for speed, danger, and often destruction. Imagine the starting gates, known as the carceres, tightly packed with these fragile machines. You get a glimpse of them up close before a race, and they are not built for safety. A Roman chariot, specifically the common four-horse quadriga, is little more than a small, open basket-like platform made of thin wood, wicker, and leather. It sits precariously on two small, light wooden wheels. There are no heavy metal frames, no protective dashboards, no roll cages. This isn't a modern armored vehicle, it's designed to be as light as possible, to maximize speed and agility, even at the cost of the driver's life. The flimsy construction is deliberate. The Romans weren't ignorant of stronger materials. They simply prioritized the thrill of the race over the safety of the charioteers. The goal was speed, yes, but also crashes. The more spectacular the collision, the more the crowd roared. So, these chariots were built to splinter, to disintegrate upon impact, turning a minor bump into a horrifying spectacle of flying wood and flailing limbs. Imagine driving a race car made entirely of plywood and duct tape. That's essentially the level of protection you'd have. The wheels are particularly vulnerable, made of wood, sometimes with iron tires. They are designed to be light and fast, but they are also susceptible to braking. A hard impact against the spina, the central barrier, a collision with another chariot, or even just the immense strain of a high-speed turn can cause a wheel to buckle or shatter, sending the chariot spinning out of control. The sound of a wheel cracking, a sharp, terrible snap, often signaled the beginning of a disastrous crash, a fascinating yet horrifying detail is the Roman innovation of razor-sharp blades on the chariot wheels or even projecting spikes. While their widespread use is debated by historians and likely exaggerated in some accounts, there are references to such modifications, particularly in later Roman racing. Imagine the added terror of not just avoiding a collision, but avoiding a collision with a chariot whose wheels are designed to actively shred its opponents. This would turn a simple bump into a devastating attack, designed to cripple rival chariots and horses, and perhaps even maim rival drivers. This concept, whether widespread or rare, highlights the extreme, almost gladiatorial, nature of the sport, where winning at all costs included physically dismantling your competition. Historians still argue about the true historical evidence for these scythe chariots, but their very mention reveals a dark, aggressive side to Roman innovation. The reins themselves contribute to the danger. Unlike modern horse racing, where reins are held in the hands, Roman charioteers typically wrap the reins tightly around their waists. This gave them maximum leverage and control over their four powerful horses, allowing them to lean into turns and use their full body weight to guide the team. However, it also created a terrifying, often fatal trap. If the chariot crashed or overturned, the driver was inevitably dragged, entangled by the very reins he used to control his destiny. To counter this, a crucial, yet terrifying tool was carried a small curved knife called a falx, often tucked into their belt or harness. This was specifically for one purpose: to cut the reins in an emergency, a desperate, final attempt to escape a gruesome, prolonged death by being dragged along the sandy track, trampled by hooves, or smashed against the spina. Imagine the presence of mind required in a moment of chaotic panic as your chariot splinters around you, horses screaming, to reach for that knife and sever your connection to a runaway team. This simple yet crucial tool highlights the constant, immediate threat that charioteers faced, a stark reminder that they were always just a moment away from oblivion, choosing between absolute control and potential escape. This choice defined their every second on the track, where a split-second decision could mean life or a prolonged, agonizing death. The horses themselves were magnificent, powerful animals, bred for speed and endurance, but they were also a source of immense danger. Four powerful horses, bolting forward at high speed, were incredibly difficult to control, especially when jostling for position with other teams. A frightened horse, a sudden swerve, or a tangled rein could send an entire team careening off course, leading to devastating crashes. The sheer force of these animals, harnessed to flimsy chariots, made every moment on the track a delicate balance of control and chaos. You witnessed these powerful beasts, sometimes adorned with feathers or elaborate harnesses, a display of both beauty and terrifying strength. The design of the track itself, the vast, sandy oval of the Circus Maximus, maximized danger. The 7 laps of a typical race were a frantic dash of speed, skill, and terrifying risk. The turns, especially at the ends of the spina, the long dividing barrier, were the most perilous points, known as the metae. These turning posts were often adorned with elaborate statues and obelisks, making them not just navigational points but literal obstacles. Here, chariots jostled for position, scraping against the turning posts in a shower of sparks and splinters, sometimes crashing head-on into them, creating spectacular, devastating pile-ups. Collisions, naufragia, or shipwrecks, were common, spectacular, and often fatal. Horses would tangle, chariots would overturn, and drivers would be dragged along the track or flung into the path of oncoming hooves. The crowd would erupt in a deafening roar of approval, their bloodlust seemingly insatiable, as the tragedy unfolded before their very eyes. This isn't a flaw in the system, it's a fundamental feature. deliberately designed to heighten the excitement and deliver the brutal spectacle that the Roman populace craved. For the spectators, a crash was the ultimate thrill, a moment of visceral drama that broke the monotony of the race. A common Roman saying, illustrating the extreme danger, was that a charioteer's life was shorter than a day's holiday. While perhaps an exaggeration, it vividly captures the perceived mortality rate of the profession. Historians, while lacking precise demographic data for all charioteers, generally agree that the injury and death rates for charioteers were incredibly high, making every victory a true triumph over the odds, a testament to immense skill and sheer luck in navigating the chaos. The psychological toll on the charioteers was immense. They lived with constant fear, adrenaline coursing through their veins with every race. They had to cultivate a detached, almost fatalistic mindset, accepting the dangers as an inherent part of the game. They pushed themselves beyond normal human limits, driven by the roar of the crowd, the intoxicating promise of wealth, and the sheer competitive spirit. Their lives were short, intense bursts of adrenaline and danger, leaving little room for a quiet, stable existence. They were gladiators on wheels, their lives gambled for entertainment, embodying the brutal reality of Roman spectacle and the disposable nature of human life when presented as entertainment for the masses. As the cheers of the phantom crowd begin to fade and the image of the dust-choked track softens, you understand the brutal paradox of the charioteer's life and the chariots they drove. These flimsy, dangerous vehicles were perfectly designed for the Roman appetite for high stakes, high casualty entertainment. They were instruments of speed and glory, but also of pain and swift, terrible death, a fitting symbol for a sport that exemplified both the grandeur and the brutality of the Roman Empire. The echoes of splintering wood and the thunder of hooves resonate still, a testament to a world where danger was the main attraction. The dust and the roar of the crowd never truly settle in the Circus Maximus. You've seen the flimsy, dangerous chariots that seem designed for destruction. Now, let's focus on the terrifying, inevitable consequence of such a brutal sport, the track of death, where collisions, crashes, and the ever-present threat of injury are not just possibilities, but a fundamental expected part of the spectacle. Imagine the race itself, 7 frantic laps around the vast, sandy oval, up to 12 chariots, though often fewer in later periods, burst from the starting gates, a thunderous wave of hoofs and shouting. The sheer speed is disorienting, the jostling for position immediate and aggressive. Every charioteer is pushing their team to the absolute limit, aiming to gain an advantage, to block a rival, or to simply survive the initial chaos. The sand churns, creating a blinding cloud of dust that hangs heavy in the air, further obscuring the already perilous track. The turns, especially at the ends of the spina, the long dividing barrier, are the most lethal points. These turning posts, known as the metae, were often adorned with ornate statues, obelisks, or even small temples, making them not just navigational points but literal, unforgiving obstacles. Chariots would hug these turns as tightly as possible to gain an advantage, their wheels scraping against the stone in a shower of sparks and splinters. This desperate maneuver, known as flectere, was incredibly dangerous. A slight miscalculation, a loss of control, or a bump from a rival chariot could send you careening into the metae, resulting in a spectacular, devastating crash. Collisions, naufragia, or shipwrecks were not just common. They were an anticipated, even celebrated, part of the race. Chariots would tangle, horses would trip, and the flimsy wooden vehicles would disintegrate upon impact, sending splinters of wood, leather, and metal flying through the air. You might witness a horse fall, bringing down its entire team in a tangled mess of thrashing limbs and broken wood. Or a chariot might overturn, flinging the driver high into the air, or, more horrifyingly, dragging him along the track by the reins wrapped around his waist. The screams of the horses, the cracking of wood, and the cries of the fallen would be momentarily drowned out by the deafening roar of the crowd. The charioteer, as we discussed, often carried a small curved knife fall to cut his reins in an emergency. But in the chaos of a naufragium, a split second was often all you had. Imagine being caught in a pile-up, your senses overwhelmed by the dust, the noise, the pain, desperately fumbling for that knife, trying to sever your connection to the thrashing horses before you are dragged or trampled to death. Many failed. Their bodies, tangled in the reins, would be dragged around the track, a horrifying spectacle for the bloodthirsty crowd, until they were either crushed, dismembered, or mercifully released by the momentum. A unique and particularly gruesome detail, sometimes described in Roman sources, was the practice of leaving, dead or injured, horses and charioteers on the track for a short period after a crash, to allow the crowd to fully appreciate the spectacle of destruction. While not every accident would result in immediate removal, imagine the psychological impact of seeing fallen bodies and mangled animals lying on the track, a grim testament to the inherent danger, while the surviving chariots continued to race past them. This deliberate display heightened the drama and underscored the brutal realities of the sport, feeding the crowd's morbid fascination. Historians still debate how consistently this practice was applied, but its mention highlights the extreme nature of Roman spectacle. The injury rate for charioteers was astronomically high: broken bones, concussions, internal bleeding from impacts, and severe lacerations from splintered wood or scraping against the track were daily occurrences during both training and races. You would see drivers with permanent limps, disfigured faces, missing limbs, or chronic pain from old, poorly healed injuries. Their bodies were living maps of their dangerous careers, each scar a silent story of a near-death experience. The constant physical trauma meant that the successful charioteers were not just skilled, but incredibly lucky, having defied death countless times. The track itself was a source of constant peril beyond just crashes. The sandy surface, while absorbing some impact, could also become uneven, creating hidden divots or loose patches that could cause a horse to stumble or a chariot to lose control. Dust, as we mentioned, was a constant hazard, obscuring vision and exacerbating respiratory issues for the drivers. The very environment was designed to be challenging, ensuring that only the most skilled and fortunate could survive the full 7 laps. The Roman fascination with danger and death was central to the appeal of chariot racing. The crowd didn't just want to see speed, they wanted to see the charioteers push the limits, to court disaster, to risk everything for victory. The spectacle of a crash, the sight of a driver being dragged or trampled, was often met with wild applause, a testament to the crowd's bloodlust and their desire for visceral drama. This cruelty, while disturbing to modern sensibilities, was a deeply ingrained aspect of Roman entertainment, blurring the lines between sport and fatal spectacle. This constant threat of injury and death led to an incredible demand for new charioteers. The stables had to constantly recruit and train young men, often slaves, to replenish their ranks as veteran drivers succumbed to their profession. This created a grim, conveyor belt system of human sacrifice, where individual lives were secondary to the insatiable appetite for entertainment. You, the spectator, might cheer for a new, promising young driver one week, only to see his career, and perhaps his life, end in a horrifying crash the next. A common Roman saying, illustrating the extreme danger, was that a charioteer's life was shorter than a day's holiday. While perhaps an exaggeration, it vividly captures the perceived mortality rate of the profession. Historians, while lacking precise demographic data for all charioteers, generally agree that the injury and death rates for charioteers were incredibly high, making every victory a true triumph over the odds, a testament to immense skill and sheer luck in navigating the chaos. The very structure of the sport selected for extreme bravery, or perhaps a profound fatalism. The psychological toll on the charioteers was immense. They lived with constant fear, adrenaline coursing through their veins with every race. They had to cultivate a detached, almost fatalistic mindset, accepting the dangers as an inherent part of the game. They pushed themselves beyond normal human limits, driven by the roar of the crowd, the intoxicating promise of wealth, and the sheer competitive spirit. Their lives were short, intense bursts of adrenaline and danger, leaving little room for a quiet, stable existence. They were gladiators on wheels, their lives gambled for entertainment, embodying the brutal reality of Roman spectacle and the disposable nature of human life when presented as entertainment for the masses. As the cheers of the phantom crowd begin to fade, and the image of the dust-choked track softens, you understand the brutal reality of the Circus Maximus. It was a track of death, designed for destruction, where human life was a fleeting, expendable element in a grand, terrifying spectacle. The echoes of splintering wood, the thunder of hooves, and the screams of the fallen resonate still, a testament to a world where danger was the main attraction, and glory was often bought at the ultimate price. The thunderous roar of the Circus Maximus continues, a relentless wave of sound that washes over the arena. You've witnessed the terrifying crashes, the splintering chariots, and the constant threat of injury. But to truly understand the brutal world of Roman chariot racing, you must turn your gaze from the track to the stands, to the crowd craze and cruelty, and the dark side of devotion that defined the spectators' bloodlust. Imagine being part of that immense crowd, packed shoulder to shoulder with thousands of other spectators. The air is thick with excitement, dust, and the intoxicating scent of expectation. You're not just a passive observer, you are an active participant, an integral part of the spectacle. Your voice joins a deafening roar as the chariots thunder past. Your body tenses with every near collision, and your heart pounds with the collective energy of the throng. This intense atmosphere is deliberately cultivated, designed to whip the crowd into a frenzy of passion and raw emotion. The factions, as we've discussed, are the driving force behind this craze. Your allegiance to the blues, greens, reds, or whites is absolute, a loyalty that runs deeper than any modern sports team affiliation. You wear your faction's colors with pride, and you view rival fans with a mixture of suspicion and outright disdain. Arguments erupt frequently in the stands, fueled by passion and often by cheap wine, escalating from heated words to physical altercations. Imagine a modern sports riot, but on a much grander scale, where passions are inflamed not just by team loyalty, but by political and social allegiances intertwined with the factions themselves. This wasn't just about winning or losing a race, it was a reflection of your identity, your social standing, and your place in the vast Roman tapestry. A fascinating and often disturbing detail of Roman crowd behavior was the use of curse tablets, defixiones. These were small lead tablets, sometimes inscribed with crude drawings, on which fans would scratch out curses aimed at rival charioteers, their horses, or even entire factions. Imagine a fan, desperate for their team to win, paying a sorcerer to inscribe a tablet with a malevolent spell, then secretly burying it near the circus, in a rival stable, or even in a grave, believing it would bring misfortune, injury, or even death to their opponents. These weren't just idle threats. They were believed to have real supernatural power in a superstitious age. This hidden, magical underworld of racing highlights the extreme lengths to which fans would go, revealing the dark, obsessive underbelly of their devotion, where the line between fervent support and outright malevolence was dangerously thin. Historians still debate the true prevalence and effectiveness of these curses, but their widespread discovery speaks volumes about the pervasive belief in magical intervention in Roman life. The cruelty of the crowd is perhaps the most unsettling aspect of this spectacle. Romans did not just enjoy speed and skill, they reveled in the danger, the crashes, and the explicit violence. The sight of a chariot overturning, of horses tangling, and especially of a charioteer being dragged or flung to his death, was often met with wild applause and frenzied cheers. This wasn't just accidental collateral damage, it was an integral part of the entertainment. The more spectacular the naufragium shipwreck, the louder the roar of approval. The crowd's bloodlust seemed insatiable, their desire for visceral drama overriding any sense of compassion or horror. This thirst for violence wasn't limited to the track. When a charioteer was badly injured, or a horse mortally wounded, the crowd often expressed a desire for the suffering to continue, or for the final blow to be delivered. Imagine the chilling spectacle of a fallen charioteer struggling to untangle his reins, while the crowd roars for him to be dragged to his inevitable demise, their faces contorted with a mixture of excitement and morbid fascination. This casual indifference to human suffering, this gleeful anticipation of death, reveals a darker side of Roman society that can be hard for modern sensibilities to fully grasp. The emperor's presence at the Circus Maximus further amplified the crowd's fervor. Emperors would often attend the races, showing their favoritism for a particular faction, sometimes even interfering with the outcome, though this was risky for public perception. Their presence transformed the circus into a direct point of contact between ruler and populace, a place where imperial power was both displayed and subtly tested. The crowd would sometimes use the races as an opportunity to voice their approval or disapproval of the emperor, making the event a unique arena for political expression, albeit within strict boundaries. This dynamic meant that cheering for a faction was not just a sporting choice, it could be a subtle political statement, aligning yourself with or against the imperial household. The betting culture around chariot racing was immense, contributing significantly to the crowd's frenzy. People would wager vast sums on the outcome of races, sometimes losing their entire fortunes in a single day. The desire to win money, combined with factional loyalty, transformed the spectators into active participants in the drama, their personal fortunes directly tied to the fate of a charioteer and his horses. Imagine the tension as your last few denarii ride on a single race, your stomach churning with a mix of excitement and dread. This pervasive gambling added another layer of obsession and desperation to the atmosphere, turning simple spectators into fervent, sometimes violent, gamblers. A uniquely Roman custom that contributed to the chaos was the free distribution of bread and circuses, panem et circenses, by emperors and wealthy citizens. This policy, designed to keep the populace content and prevent unrest, meant that even the poorest Roman citizens could attend the games and receive free food. While seemingly benevolent, it also cultivated a dependence on entertainment and fueled the crowd's demand for ever more spectacular and violent displays. You, a common citizen, would gratefully accept the free bread and then join the roaring throng. Your hunger for sustenance subtly intertwined with your hunger for spectacle. Historians still debate the true motivations behind this policy, whether it was genuine care for the populace or merely a cynical tool for political control. Highlighting the complex relationship between rulers and their subjects. The sheer duration of the events also contributed to the crowd's fever pitch. A race day at the Circus Maximus could last for hours, featuring dozens of individual races, punctuated by processions, wild animal hunts, and other spectacles. This sustained exposure to excitement, noise, and the constant consumption of food and drink, often cheap wine, would whip the crowd into a state of heightened emotional arousal, blurring the lines between reason and raw passion. By the end of the day, the circus would be a maelstrom of noise and emotion, reflecting the collective exhaustion and exhilaration of the crowd. As the phantom roar of the crowd begins to fade, and the image of the dust-choked track softens, you understand that the Roman crowd was not just an audience, it was a living, breathing entity, a collective force driven by a potent mix of passion, loyalty, and a disturbing appetite for cruelty. Their cheers and their cruelty were an integral part of the spectacle, shaping the very nature of chariot racing and reflecting a darker, more visceral side of Roman society. The echoes of their bloodthirsty cries resonate still, a testament to a world where entertainment and brutality were inextricably linked, and where devotion could quickly turn to a chilling, dehumanizing frenzy. The roar of the Roman crowd, their bloodlust and unwavering factional loyalties, creates an intoxicating, yet perilous, atmosphere. You've witnessed the spectacle from the stands, but beneath the thunder of hooves and the gleam of gold lies a hidden, often sordid, underworld where betting, bribes, and outright corruption were as rampant as the dust on the track. This is where justice truly sucked in the brutal world of Roman chariot racing for those who dared to gamble on its outcomes. Imagine yourself as a passionate fan, perhaps a shopkeeper from the Subura, or a retired legionary with a small pension. You spend your meager savings, perhaps even your family's future, on placing bets at the Circus Maximus. There were no official pari-mutuel systems like today. Instead, you'd place your wagers with bookmakers argentari, often operating from temporary stalls or even just on the street corners outside the circus. They were sharp, cunning individuals who took your money, offered odds, and promised payouts, but their operations were largely unregulated. This created a fertile ground for scams, cheating, and outright theft, with little recourse for the cheated bettor. The scale of betting sponsio was immense, permeating every social class, from the lowliest plebeian to the wealthiest senator. Everyone gambled on the races. People would wager vast sums, sometimes entire fortunes, on the outcome of a single race, driven by factional loyalty, greed, and the thrill of the gamble. Imagine the intense anxiety as your last few denarii ride on a single chariot, your stomach churning with a mix of excitement and dread. This pervasive gambling added another layer of obsession and desperation to the atmosphere, turning simple spectators into fervent, sometimes violent, gamblers. For many, it wasn't just entertainment, it was a desperate attempt to climb the social ladder or to simply survive through a risky, often rigged, game of chance. But where there's massive gambling, there's inevitably corruption. The stakes were too high for fair play to always prevail. Charioteers, trainers, and even stable hands were susceptible to bribes pecunia accepta. Imagine a rival faction offering a charioteer a hefty sum of gold to throw a race, to deliberately cause a crash, or to simply perform poorly. For a charioteer, often a slave or a freedman with little power, such a bribe could be life-changing, offering a chance at true freedom or immense wealth, even if it meant betraying their faction or endangering themselves. The temptation was immense, and the risks of being caught were high, but the potential rewards often outweighed the fear of punishment. A particularly insidious form of corruption involved the drugging or injuring of horses. Imagine a trainer, bribed by a rival faction, secretly administering a substance to an opposing team's horses to make them lethargic, or, more brutally, deliberately injuring them in the stables to prevent them from racing. These clandestine acts, if discovered, would lead to severe punishment. But the secretive nature of the stables and the desperation for victory meant that such practices likely occurred more often than recorded. This silent warfare in the stables highlights the ruthless competition that existed beyond the public spectacle. Historians still debate the full extent of such deliberate sabotage, as evidence is often circumstantial or relies on anecdotal accounts. Even the starting gates carceries could be rigged. Imagine a subtle malfunction designed to give one faction an unfair advantage at the start, or to delay arrival. Such tampering would be incredibly hard to detect in the chaos of a race start, but a slight delay could mean the difference between victory and defeat. These subtle forms of cheating demonstrate the lengths to which factions would go to secure a win, undermining the very integrity of the sport. The judges and officials overseeing the races were also susceptible to bribes or pressure from powerful factions and wealthy patrons. While Roman law theoretically condemned such corruption, the reality was often different. A subtle nod, a whispered promise, or a generous gift could sway a ruling on a disputed foul, or influence which chariots were allowed to participate in which heats. For a common bettor, this meant that the outcome of a race might be predetermined by forces far beyond their understanding, making their gamble even more precarious. Justice on the track, like justice in many other parts of Roman life, was often influenced by power and money, not just skill or fairness. The underworld of Roman racing was a shadowy network of gamblers, fixers, and enforcers. These individuals operated at the fringes of legality, engaging in everything from loan sharking to outright violence. If you owed a gambling debt you couldn't pay, you might find yourself facing severe consequences, from physical intimidation to forced labor. This dark side of the racing world, fueled by massive sums of money and unchecked passion, added another layer of peril for anyone who dared to get involved. Whether as a charioteer, a bettor, or a small-time operator, the use of curse tablets, deficciones, which we discussed earlier, also ties into this underworld of corruption. While seemingly magical, these tablets were often commissioned as part of a more organized effort to gain an advantage. Imagine a faction leader, or a wealthy bettor, employing sorcerers to cast spells on rival teams, hoping to ensure victory through supernatural means. This blend of superstition and calculated corruption made the races not just a test of athletic prowess, but a battle against unseen, malevolent forces in the minds of many Romans. The consequences of being caught in a bribery scheme or a fixed race could be severe, especially for the charioteers themselves. While powerful patrons might escape censure, the charioteer, if a slave, could face brutal corporal punishment or even death. If a freedman, they could lose their hard-won freedom and wealth and be banished from the circus forever. The stakes were incredibly high, making participation in such schemes a desperate, high-risk gamble, often driven by the immense pressure to win or the allure of life-changing wealth. Historians still widely debate the precise prevalence and systemic nature of corruption in Roman chariot racing. While literary sources and archaeological finds like the curse tablets suggest it was widespread, the true extent is hard to quantify. Was it an occasional vice or a deeply ingrained part of the system? This open question highlights the challenge of reconstructing the true ethical landscape of ancient sports, where winning at all costs often led to blurring the lines of fairness and legality. The overall environment of fanaticism and unchecked passion contributed to this pervasive corruption. When millions of people are desperately invested in the outcome of a race, financially and emotionally, the temptation to gain an unfair advantage becomes irresistible. The sheer volume of money flowing through the betting markets created an irresistible magnet for those looking to exploit the system. This made the Circus Maximus not just a temple of sport, but a hotbed of greed, deceit, and brutal competition, where victory often went not just to the swiftest, but to the most ruthless. As the phantom roar of the crowd begins to fade and the image of the dust-choked track softens, you understand that the Roman circus was a place where justice often sucked, not just for the charioteers, but for anyone who dared to place a bet or get entangled in its vast, corrupt underworld. The thrill of the gamble, the promise of wealth, and the intoxicating power of factional loyalty masked a brutal reality where fairness was often a casualty, and integrity was easily bought and sold. The echoes of whispered bribes and desperate curses resonate still, a testament to a world where money, power, and passion often triumphed over skill and honest competition. The roar of the Circus Maximus might eventually fade, but the scars and the stories of victory linger. You've witnessed the brutal training, the flimsy chariots, and the pervasive corruption. Now, we turn to the ultimate outcomes for the charioteers themselves: the glory, the immense wealth, and the lasting scars that defined their fleeting moments of triumph, and the profound costs of their perilous profession. Imagine the climax of a race your chosen charioteer, perhaps a legendary figure like Scorpus or Diocles, crosses the finish line, his horses a blur of motion, his chariot intact. The roar of the crowd is deafening, a tsunami of adulation. This is glory, pure and unadulterated. As the victor, you would perform a triumphal lap, basking in the adoration of 250,000 screaming fans. They throw flowers, ribbons, and small tokens of their devotion onto the track. Your faction's supporters erupt in a frenzy of joy, waving their colors, shouting your name. For that moment, you are more celebrated than generals, perhaps even more beloved than the emperor himself. This intoxicating wave of fame was unlike anything known before or since, transforming an often low-born individual into a demigod in the eyes of the Roman populace. This glory translated directly into immense wealth. Charioteers, especially the most successful ones, earned staggering sums of money from prize winnings. These prizes were not just symbolic, they were substantial cash payments, often accumulated over a career spanning hundreds of races. For a charioteer who was a slave, these winnings could be enough to buy their freedom manumission, transforming them from chattel into freedmen, a monumental achievement that few slaves ever attained. Imagine the feeling of purchasing your own liberty, of no longer being owned simply through your skill and bravery on the track. This was the ultimate prize, a path to true independence. A unique and often surprising detail is the sheer scale of wealth accumulated by the most successful charioteers, which could rival or even surpass the fortunes of senators and wealthy aristocrats. For example, Gaius Appuleius Diocles, a famous charioteer from the 2nd century CE, reportedly earned over 35 million sesterces in prize money during his career. To put that in perspective, this sum could have funded an entire Roman legion for a year or built a significant public work. Imagine a modern-day athlete earning the equivalent of billions of dollars over their career. This astronomical wealth allowed charioteers to build lavish homes, own vast estates, and live a life of luxury completely unimaginable for someone of their humble origins. Historians continue to analyze these ancient earnings to understand the extreme economic incentives and the vast sums that flowed through the Roman entertainment industry, highlighting the unprecedented wealth generated by professional sports in the ancient world. However, this glory and wealth came at a terrible, lasting cost: the scars, both physical and psychological. Your body, if you were a charioteer, would be a living testament to the brutality of your profession. Broken bones, dislocated joints, concussions, deep lacerations from splintered wood, and countless abrasions from being dragged across the sand were common occurrences. You might walk with a permanent limp, have twisted limbs, or bear the marks of severe facial injuries. These were the grim trophies of your dangerous career, a visible history of every near-death experience, every bone-shattering impact. Imagine the chronic pain, the constant ache of old injuries that would plague you even in your moments of triumph. The psychological scars were equally profound. The constant fear of death, the adrenaline highs and lows, the witnessing of horrific crashes involving your rivals or even your own horses, all contributed to immense mental strain. Charioteers had to cultivate a detached, almost fatalistic mindset, accepting that each race could be their last. They lived on a razor's edge between glory and oblivion, pushing themselves beyond normal human limits. This intense, high stakes existence left little room for a quiet, stable life. Their very being was defined by the speed and the danger of the track. Even if they retired wealthy, the echoes of the crowd, the smell of dust and blood, and the memory of agonizing pain would likely haunt them for the rest of their lives. The brevity of their careers was another brutal reality. While some charioteers enjoyed long careers, many met an early end on the track. Inscriptions on gravestones often reveal deaths in their 20s or 30s, after relatively short but incredibly intense periods of racing. For every legendary survivor like Diocles, who retired at 42, there were hundreds, perhaps thousands, of nameless charioteers who met a brutal, anonymous end in a chaotic pileup, their lives cut short in a cloud of dust and splintered wood. The constant demand for fresh talent meant a grim, continuous pipeline of young, aspiring drivers willing to risk everything for a shot at fame and fortune. The phenomenon of charioteers having multiple names and epithets on their victory monuments and gravestones also speaks to their complex identity. They might use their original slave name, their freedman name, or honorific titles given by their fans or emperors. This practice highlights how their identities were transformed through their victories, moving from anonymity to celebrity, yet often retaining a subtle connection to their humble origins. Historians study these inscriptions to understand the social mobility or lack thereof offered by the chariot racing profession and the complex ways individuals constructed their public persona in ancient Rome. Even in victory, the charioteer's life was one of constant competition and rivalry. There was no true camaraderie between drivers from opposing factions, only intense rivalry. They might engage in verbal taunts, subtle fouls on the track, or even resort to desperate measures like using curse tablets. The pressure to win was immense, not just for personal glory, but for the honor and financial interests of their faction and their thousands of fans. This created an environment of relentless, cutthroat competition where every race was a battle not just against the horses and the track, but against every other driver. The very nature of their fame was fleeting. While they were adored during their racing careers, their popularity could wane quickly with age, injury, or declining performance. A new, younger, more daring driver would always emerge to capture the crowd's fickle attention. This constant pressure to perform, to maintain their glory, added another layer of psychological burden to an already brutal existence. They lived in the constant spotlight, knowing that one wrong move could cost them everything: their fame, their fortune, and their life. As the phantom roar of the crowd begins to fade and the image of the dust-choked track softens, you understand the brutal paradox of the charioteer's life. They were celebrated, adored, and sometimes immensely wealthy, but their fame came at the cost of constant pain, perennial danger, and often a tragically short life. Their existence was a testament to the Roman love for spectacle and the human willingness to risk everything for a shot at glory. A fleeting triumph over the ever-present shadow of death in the brutal world of the Roman circus. Their scars, both seen and unseen, are a powerful, enduring legacy. A somber reminder of the ultimate price paid for a fleeting moment of dazzling triumph in the most brutal arena of the ancient world. The echoes of glory and the glint of blood money fade as we delve into the ultimate power dynamic behind the brutal world of Roman chariot racing, the emperor's playground. This isn't just about sports, it's about imperial involvement, the display of ultimate power, and how the highest authority in Rome used the Circus Maximus as a stage for control, communication, and sometimes terrifying whim. Imagine the sheer spectacle of the emperor's arrival at the Circus Maximus. He would enter the imperial box pulvinar, an opulent, elevated viewing platform directly above the track, adorned with statues and rich fabrics. The crowd, already in a frenzy for the races, would erupt into an even louder roar, a thunderous acclamation for the supreme ruler of the Roman world. This was a deliberate display of power, a visual reminder of who ultimately commanded everything, from the legions to the entertainment. For you, a common spectator, it was a moment of awe, a direct connection to the living God who ruled your world. The emperor's presence at the races was not merely recreational. It was a fundamental aspect of imperial propaganda and public relations. By attending the games, the emperor demonstrated his care for the populace, providing them with the bread and circuses that kept them content and distracted from political grievances. It was a visible performance of imperial benevolence, strengthening the bond between the ruler and the people. Imagine the cheer that would erupt if the emperor, with a flourish, doubled the prize money for a winning charioteer, or granted a popular driver his freedom on the spot. These were powerful gestures, carefully calculated to win public favor and reinforce imperial authority. However, the emperor's involvement also added another layer of danger and unpredictability to the races. Emperors often had their favorite factions, openly displaying their allegiance to the greens, blues, reds, or whites. Nero, for instance, famously favored the greens. This imperial favoritism could significantly influence the dynamics of the races. A faction favored by the emperor might receive more resources, more highly trained horses, and certainly more favorable treatment from race officials. Conversely, a faction that fell out of imperial favor could find itself subtly disadvantaged, its charioteers facing tougher odds. A unique and terrifying detail was the potential for imperial interference or whimsy. While rare, there are accounts of emperors directly influencing the outcome of races, or even engaging in outrageous behavior. Caligula, notoriously erratic, was said to be so obsessed with the greens that he would dine in their stables and even consider making his favorite horse, Incitatus, a consul. While such extreme stories might be exaggerated, they highlight the very real possibility of imperial caprice, where the absolute power of the emperor could intrude upon the sanctity of the games, making them even more unpredictable and dangerous for those involved. Imagine a race where the rules are suddenly changed midway, or a charioteer is punished not for a foul, but for incurring the emperor's displeasure. Historians still debate the extent of direct imperial interference versus mere patronage, but the emperor's ultimate power was undeniable. The Circus Maximus, therefore, was not just an arena for sport. It was a crucial platform for communication between the emperor and the populace. The crowd could express its approval or disapproval of imperial policies through their cheers, boos, or even organized chants. While direct dissent was dangerous, the anonymity of the crowd offered a limited space for public opinion to be voiced. The emperor, in turn, could gauge the mood of the people, issue announcements, or display his benevolence. It was a subtle, unwritten dialogue between ruler and ruled, conducted amidst the thunderous spectacle of the races. The charioteers themselves were often treated as extensions of imperial power. Their victories brought glory not just to their factions, but implicitly to the emperor who supported or attended the games. A charioteer might be granted special honors by the emperor, have statues erected in their name, or even be given a place in the imperial household after retirement. This elevation of successful charioteers served to reinforce the idea that their glory was tied to the glory of Rome and its ruler, making them instruments of imperial spectacle and control. The immense financial investment by the emperor in the games was also a display of power, funding the colossal cost of staging the races, importing exotic horses, and maintaining the vast infrastructure of the circus, demonstrated the limitless wealth and resources of the imperial state. This spectacle was a visible manifestation of Rome's power, designed to impress both its citizens and any visiting dignitaries from conquered lands or rival empires. It was an expensive, yet highly effective, form of soft power projection, showcasing Roman might and organizational genius. A less glamorous but significant aspect of imperial involvement was the management of crowd control and safety. With hundreds of thousands of people packed into the circus, maintaining order was a monumental task. The emperor's guards, the Praetorian Guard, would be present to ensure security, deter violence, and suppress any unrest. While riots between factions could still erupt, the ultimate authority of the emperor and his armed forces served as a grim reminder of who held ultimate control, ensuring that the spectacle, however wild, never descended into complete chaos that threatened the state. You would feel their presence, an unspoken assurance of order, but also a chilling reminder of who commanded the power. The emperor's passion for chariot racing could sometimes extend to his personal participation. While rare for emperors to drive chariots professionally in the Circus Maximus, as it was considered a low-status profession for a Roman citizen, let alone an emperor. Some emperors, notably Nero, were notorious for their personal involvement, even competing in races themselves, often rigging the outcomes to ensure their own victory. Imagine the sight of the emperor himself, clad in factional colors, driving a chariot on the sacred track, blurring the lines between ruler and entertainer, a spectacle that would simultaneously awe and perhaps subtly disturb the traditional Roman sensibilities. Historians still debate the political wisdom of such direct imperial participation, and whether it truly enhanced or diminished an emperor's prestige. Ultimately, the Roman Circus Maximus was the emperor's playground, a vast arena where power was displayed, popularity was courted, and control was subtly asserted. The races were more than just a diversion. They were a vital component of imperial governance, a complex interaction between ruler and ruled, mediated through the exhilarating, brutal spectacle of chariots and horses. For you, the spectator, it was a profound experience, connecting you to the heart of Roman power and the insatiable appetite for spectacle that defined the greatest empire of the ancient world. The thunder of hooves and the roar of the crowd were not just sounds of entertainment. They were the very pulse of Roman power, a legacy of spectacle that continues to resonate through the ages. The roar of the Circus Maximus has long since faded. The dust settled, and the grandstands reclaimed by time and nature. The thunder of hooves, the shouts of the charioteers, the fervent cries of the factions, all are but echoes in the winds of history. Yet, the legacy of spectacle left by Roman chariot racing, its profound impact on entertainment and obsession, resonates even today, shaping how we view sports, fame, and the raw power of collective human passion. Imagine stepping from the ancient Circus Maximus into a modern sports stadium. The differences are immense: safety barriers, instant replays, corporate sponsorships, and meticulously regulated rules. But the core human impulses that drove the Roman crowds are still powerfully present. The intense fanaticism you witnessed for the blues, greens, reds, and whites finds its direct modern parallel in the unwavering loyalty to sports teams today. Think of the intense rivalries between university football teams, the passionate devotion of soccer fans, or the tribal allegiance to a local baseball club. The colors worn, the chants shouted, the arguments endured. All are direct descendants of the factional craze that gripped Rome. This deep, almost irrational, loyalty demonstrates a fundamental human need for belonging and collective identity, a need perfectly harnessed by the spectacle of sport. The celebrity of the charioteers, who rose from humble origins to immense fame and wealth, foreshadowed the modern phenomenon of sports superstars. Like contemporary athletes, Roman charioteers were adored, their faces appearing on countless everyday objects. their victories celebrated with parades and monuments. They were symbols of aspiration, embodying the dream of escaping poverty through extraordinary talent. This creation of heroic figures on the sporting field, capable of captivating vast populations, is a direct legacy of the Roman circus. We still crave larger than life figures who defy the odds, whose triumphs and struggles play out in public arenas. The Roman fascination with danger and destruction in chariot racing, particularly the spectacular crashes naufragia, reflects a darker yet undeniable aspect of human psychology that still influences entertainment. While modern sports strive for safety, there's an inherent thrill in witnessing high speed, high stakes competition where a single mistake can have dramatic consequences. Think of the allure of NASCAR crashes or extreme sports where athletes push the boundaries of what is humanly possible. The Roman crowd's bloodlust for brutal spectacle, though shocking to our sensibilities, reveals a primal human fascination with risk and the fragility of life. This raw appeal to visceral emotion, of witnessing the edge of catastrophe, remains a powerful draw in various forms of modern entertainment. A unique, though unsettling, legacy is the very concept of mass produced, state sponsored entertainment designed to keep a populace content. The Roman policy of bread and circuses, panem et circenses, while a tool of political control, established a blueprint for using public spectacle as a means of distraction and social cohesion. While modern governments don't directly provide free tickets and food to sporting events, the widespread availability and cultural importance of sports and entertainment serve a similar function in contemporary society, offering a shared experience that unites diverse populations and provides an outlet for collective passion. Historians continue to debate the ethical implications of using entertainment as a tool for social control, often drawing parallels between ancient Rome and modern societies. The rampant betting and corruption that permeated Roman chariot racing also finds its echoes in the modern sports world. The vast sums of money involved in betting today, from legal sports books to illicit gambling operations, create constant opportunities for fraud, match fixing, and bribery. While modern legal systems are far more robust, the underlying human desires for immense wealth and an unfair advantage remain constant. The ancient Romans' use of curse tablets, while seemingly primitive, reflects a desperate, almost obsessive desire to control outcomes, a dark mirror to modern day attempts at technological or illicit manipulation. The political dimensions of sports, where allegiances can reflect deeper social or political divides, also have ancient roots in the Roman factions. While not as overtly political as the Blues and Greens, modern sports teams can still become symbols of regional pride, social class, or cultural identity, leading to passionate, sometimes volatile, rivalries that extend beyond the playing field. The emperor's manipulation of the games for public approval and control is a stark reminder of how powerful figures can harness the unifying and divisive force of entertainment for their own ends. Ultimately, the brutal world of Roman chariot racing was a complex tapestry of ambition, skill, danger, passion, and control. It highlighted the heights of human aspiration and the depths of human cruelty. The lives of the charioteers, short and violent, yet often dazzlingly famous, embody the timeless paradox of sacrificing personal safety for public glory. Their enduring scars, both visible and unseen, are a testament to the ultimate price paid for entertainment and the relentless pursuit of victory. As you drift deeper into sleep tonight, reflect on the vast, echoing stadium of the Circus Maximus. The thunder of hooves has long since ceased, but its legacy lives on in every cheering crowd, every passionate fan, and every athlete who risks everything for a moment of glory. Roman chariot racing was a mirror to its society grand, brutal, innovative, and utterly obsessed with spectacle. And in that reflection, we can still see fragments of ourselves, a testament to the enduring human desire for competition, excitement, and the raw, visceral drama of triumph and tragedy. The Roman Empire may have fallen, but its insatiable appetite for spectacle, forged in the dust of the circus, continues to shape our world, a silent, powerful, and utterly captivating inheritance.